So there's this idea in writing fiction especially, that you're either a discovery writer or you're a planner. George R.R. Martin has famously referred to the same concept as a gardener or an architect. The idea being that if you're a planner, you plan out your story meticulously ahead of time. And then once you have that all planned, you just write it. And it doesn't require a whole lot of revision on the back end. Whereas if you're a discovery writer, and Stephen King is a good example of that, he's a quintessential discovery writer, you might not actually necessarily know where your story is going. And that might sound crazy to people who aren't discovery writers. But as Stephen King would say, if he knew exactly where the story was going, it would take all of the fun of writing out of it for him, because he's not experiencing it new the way someone reading it would be. And your gut instinct would probably be to think that discovery writers are probably largely driven by their emotions, and that planners are probably the really logical people who meticulously plan out, make sure everything makes sense before they get going. But anecdotally, that has not been my experience. If you look at me and my wife, for example, she is far more emotional than I am. And I don't mean that in a bad way, not at all. Whereas I at times seem to completely lack emotions, even being described as robot-like, letting logic drive almost everything I do. But when it comes to creative endeavors, and I'm bringing up this writing principle because I think it applies to more than just writing, I think it's any creative work most likely. Our roles that you would assume that we would fit neatly into, that being planner or discovery writer, they're completely flipped. My wife has been working on a story and she knows everything that's going to happen in that story before it happens. When I try writing, I don't have the slightest clue where the story is going. And I'm bringing this up to say that I didn't really know when starting this project where this door was going to go. Yeah, I had some vague ideas about what was going to happen, but largely I'm discovering the end product as I go. You obviously have seen the thumbnail, so you know what the doors are going to turn out looking like, but at this point, I really don't know. And if I had to fit the doors to a specific frame, it'd be different, but I don't even need the doors to be a specific size at all, because I'm making everything custom, the frame around them and everything. So they can be whatever size they want. I can just build them to what seems right, and then make a frame that fits that. And that's basically what I wound up doing. So to catch you up to speed after that long sidetrack, I'm making 3 doors for this shop. 2 of them are going to be a double door, only one door handle on the double door. And then there's a smaller door that's the test door, basically. Anything I did for the first time, I did it on that smaller door because it's going to be the less visible of the 3 doors. Something else that was cool about making my own doors, because I'm making my own doors and making the frame that's going to go around them as well, I can make them tall if I want. It doesn't cost me any extra money really to make them tall, so might as well. I made, I think they're close to 7 feet. So basically I just bought some of the nicest looking 2x8s that I could find at Lowe's, and I'm squaring up the ends of them on the table saw. I don't have a joiner or anything. The table saw is going to be good enough for this. You might be wondering why I'm making my own doors anyway. Well, I wasn't planning on it originally. I was going to go to Habitat for Humanity and buy some cheap doors and just use those. But they didn't have any. So I went to Lowe's, and their cheapest exterior doors were like $300. So I'm like, I can probably make 3 doors for less than $1,000. And that's exactly what I did. Sure, maybe it used up every single bit of free time I had for 2 months to build these doors, but I did it. And I saved a couple $100 doing it. So, if you're watching this and you're a creative type, and if you're a human made in the image of your creator, yeah, you're a creative type. I'm wondering if any of you creative types, whenever you're making, do you ever listen to audiobooks? For me, it depends on what I'm doing. If I have to like focus and think and do math and measure, I can't listen to anything, not even music. But if I'm doing a repetitive task like painting or sanding, I'll be listening to audiobooks. And there's this interesting thing that happens with audiobooks, and I'm curious if it happens to you as well. Whenever I listen to an audiobook, whenever I make a thing, the contents of that audiobook and the thing that I made become like intrinsically linked together in my mind. Meaning that if I ever look at the thing that I made, I'll think about the audiobook that I read, or think about something from the audiobook that I was listening to, not reading. Or the opposite also happens. If I were to get into a conversation, for example, about a book that I had read, I'd probably have images of the thing that I created linked along with it. So during the course of working on these doors, I listened to 3 books. I listened to A Wizard of Earthsea, the first book in the Earthsea series. I listened to a book on psychology and the way that you relate to God called Anatomy of the Soul. And the last book that I listened to was The 12-Week Year. I'd say that A Wizard of Earthsea was probably the most impactful on my mind of those 3 books. And that whenever I see my door, I'm probably going to think of Wizards and Earthsea, and the not as good as Tolkien, but still pretty good fantasy world building that Ursula K. Le Guin does. It was an enjoyable book, and I'm definitely going to listen to more in the series. Okay, so now that I have the tongue cut in all of the shorter pieces that are going to be the width of the doors, I need to cut a groove. So there's going to be 3 of these short pieces per door. 1 on the bottom, 1 in the middle, and 1 on the top. The bottom and the top are going to have a groove cut on just one side, and then the middle is going to have a groove cut on both sides. So for the groove, which I started cutting in this board, no, I don't have a dado blade. I know they exist, but I don't have the extra money for a dado blade, so I might just wind up making a bunch of passes. We'll see. I made the side 2 passes already. So these 2 lines, this middle piece is going to wind up getting cut out completely, and that will become my groove. And the groove is basically the same dimensions as the tongue, but just a little bit longer and just a hair wider. I could make it, a little bit more exact, but I'd like a little bit of wiggle room. I don't want to be beating the boards in place, this being pine and not the thickest of material here. I don't want to force anything and wind up splitting it, so I'm going a little bit loose, and I think we'll be all right. So the second book that I listened to while making these doors was called Anatomy of the Soul. It's about how your relationship with your parents, especially formed when you were a child, how that relationship and the way that you see them behave in general affects the way that you think God relates to you. So, for better or for worse, usually worse, the way that our parents treat us often winds up affecting the way that we think God perceives us as well. The book isn't just about how childhood development might affect your relationship with God. It covers a lot of other things too. But if you are someone who struggles with the thought that God doesn't love you, or that you're not good enough, or something silly like that, then it's probably a book worth checking out. I wouldn't recommend listening to it though. It's a little too intense to listen to. It's probably a book that you should read and study, and listening's just a little bit too much. So yeah, good book, read it, don't listen to it. Here you can see I've made 2 passes now in each direction on these boards, for a total of 4 passes. and I just brought the saw blade in a little bit more, and that should give me the full groove. You can see there's a tiny little sliver of wood left in the middle. I wound up going through and breaking that off with a chisel, flattening it down with a chisel. In hindsight, I think I would have been better off just making another pass with the saw blade, but the chisel is what I did, and it still worked. So you can see this sliver here. I broke off all in one piece, and this does still need cleaned up a little bit. There's still a little bit of, I don't know if you can see it. There's still a little bit of schmoo that needs to be cleaned out, but like I said, I'll be able to get that cleaned out very easily with a chisel. I could make another pass with the saw, but I think it'd be just as quick to go through at this point and save my saw blade some wear and tear if I went through with a chisel. So, in case you didn't figure out based on the title of these videos or this playlist, I don't actually have a shop. I don't have a workshop where I can keep my tools nice and neat and organized. So, because of that, I can't actually find the chisel that I was talking about using. So, I guess change of plans for now. I'm going to, after work tomorrow, go pick up some cheap chisels from Harbor Freight. For the meantime, though, I want to show you what else we're going to be using. So, like I said, we're using this nominal lumber for the rim. Is rim the right word? We're using this nominal lumber for the outside of the door and a center beam across the middle. But the bulk of the inside of the door is going to be this wood here. And sadly, I don't actually know what this is. I can't tell you. The guy who gave it to me told me it was cedar. I don't know that this is cedar. I think it's something in the same family, for sure. It's got, you know, like a similar smell and similar, like, characteristics, but I don't know that it is cedar. Maybe someone who's better at identifying woods would be able to tell me. But this is what we're using. I was given this for free, so we're gonna use it. Okay, I went ahead and dry fit this piece up. I still don't have the the grooves cleaned up. It's still not tomorrow. I still don't have that that chisel. But I just wanted to dry fit this up to give you guys a visual representation of what's going to be going on here. So, you know, long boards on the sides, and then the pieces of wood, the short pieces of wood that have the tongue or the groove just on one side, like this. That's the bottom and the top, and then this middle section has a groove on the top and the bottom, and it's in this groove. Sorry, the lighting is so muddled. It's in this groove all the way around that we're going to be putting these cedar boards. And I didn't actually measure the thickness of these. I'm not expecting them to fit in this. No. Yeah, it's not the right size. I wasn't expecting it to be. I was pretty sure it was going to be bigger. So, what we're going to do is kind of like we did to make the tongues on these boards. We're just going to mill the ends of the cedar. We're going to cut the ends of the cedar, give them a little bit of a tongue. Same thickness as this to fit in to our groove here. To give myself a little bit more wiggle room for being sloppy, I went ahead and rounded off the corners of these tongues with a router, just to hopefully make the fit up a little bit easier. So because this groove is so deep, I can't actually use the chisel kind of flat like you're supposed to use chisels. I have to flip it over and get it down in there that way, or else the angle would be too steep. If I try to go in like this, it just digs into the wood and I can't move anywhere. So I have to have it flipped upside down. And yes, I do know that this would be a lot easier if I had it clamped in something, but like I said, I don't have a workshop yet. That's the whole point of this. I'm now taking a router and rounding off the inside of the tongue to, again, just hopefully give myself a little bit more leeway in the fit up. Okay, so quick sidetrack. Right after filming that last shot, I found this arrowhead. I live in central North Carolina, and it's not, you know, unheard of to find arrowheads, especially if you're like a farmer and you till a field and then it rains. But my entire life I've lived here and I've always wanted to find an arrowhead, and I've never done it until now. It was just on the ground in the shop. If you saw the last episode, one of the shovelfuls of dirt that I threw onto the floor of the shop, it had that arrowhead in it. And it's such a nice arrowhead. It's got like barbs on it and everything. Anyway, I just had to show off my cool find. Luckily for these cedar planks that I'm putting in the middle of the door, the amount of material that I have to remove off to make a tongue for them is less than the thickness of a saw blade. So I don't have to first cut in one direction and then turn the board on its side and cut a different direction. I can just do a single pass. So here I'm creating the first board that's part of the paneling, meaning that it's going to have a tongue both on the top and bottom, as well as all along one side. All right, I bet it almost looks like I know what I'm doing. So I dry fitted all this together. Nothing's glued yet. One, just to kind of make sure I was on track and hadn't messed anything up yet. But two, I need to get the measurement for this board here, because I'm gonna have to rip this one down to size. So I got all the boards cut for the top and bottom of the first door. And my wife was kind enough to give them a light sanding for me before I stained them. That's how you know that your wife loves you. If she sands your wood projects for you, you know you've got a good woman. So the stain that I'm using, you're supposed to brush it on and then let it sit for a minute or two before you wipe away the excess. So what I found worked well for me was to brush it on 2 boards, and by the time I finish the second board, I wipe it off the first board, and then I start brushing it on to another board, and then I wipe it off the second board, and then I brush it onto another board, and then I wipe it off the third board, and I just rinse and repeat that until I'm done. Basically, the time that it takes me to brush on the stain onto another board, it's enough time for the stain sitting there on the initial board that I can then wipe it away. Did that make sense, or did I just overcomplicate it? And the reason that I'm staining the boards in this way, like I have the tongues and the grooves hooked together, I have them hooked together, but I have a slight gap on purpose because I'm wanting to stain part of the tongue, but not all of the tongue. I'm leaving some of the tongue, most of the tongue, in fact, unstained, so that way I know I'm not going to have any issues with wood glue sticking to it, because I want to glue the grooves, the tongues and the grooves. But if you were to not get any stain on the tongue at all, then what often would wind up happening is, with seasonal expansion and contraction of the wood, you'll wind up getting little gaps showing in between the boards, and you'll have a little piece of tongue that's not stained, and it's very noticeable. So to minimize that, I went ahead and purposefully stained part of the tongue to help hide any imperfections in my craftsmanship, but also to help guard against seasonal expansion and contraction. What I'm doing here might not make total sense yet, but because the outside boards, the pine boards, are going to be stained a different color than the inner cedar boards, I can't stain them at the same time. Or I could, but I'd have to be super careful. So rather than trying to stain it all once it's assembled separate colors, I'm staining the inside edge of the outer part of the door, the pine part. The part that's going to be in close contact with the cedar boards that are a different color. So I'm staining this now so I won't have to be super careful staining it later. I thought I'd include this video of this little guy. I decided to make myself some tea, and I left the tea bag sitting out, and this grasshopper, locust, I don't know the difference. He came by and he was very, very much enjoying that bag of tea. I just included this because it was a silly little part of the process of me making these doors. And look at his mouth parts. You can see all of his little mouth parts moving. So, to keep with my style of showing mistakes that I make instead of hiding them or editing them out, I was dry fitting all three of these doors together. And the first door, the smaller one, which is underneath, you probably can't see it. First one fit together fine. The second door, it is not fitting together fine. This literally is like a half-inch gap. I'm not sure what I did wrong. The best I can figure is when I measured, maybe I measured from one ridge to the other ridge instead of measuring from the bottom of that lip. I'm not sure, but I need to cut a half-inch off of these boards. Okay, so I finished dry fitting everything together, and the results are mixed. So everything fits on the second door, but now I cut a little bit too much, and you can see there's a gap there showing. That's gonna be okay. I'm gonna have to go back and re-stain all of the pieces that I had to re-trim. You can see it on this door too. This is the third door up here. All the pieces that I had to re-trim, I'm gonna have to go back and re-stain that. But I made these, the way I stained them, I stained part of the tongue too. That way, in case I did have to have gaps in between these a little bit to cover up stuff like that. If I had to have gaps in between these just to make things fit upright, or because of seasonal swelling over time, I didn't want there to be tongue showing in that crack that wasn't stained at all. So that's why I stained part of the tongue as well. The bad news about the third door is that this board here is bowed fairly substantially. So it's giving me some issues with trying to dry fit this together. I think it's as close as we're going to get it. I think once I straighten this board out, this will fit up just fine. But that means we're going to have to do some weird clamping stuff when I go to glue all this together to hopefully straighten this board out. Something else you might notice on all of these boards, I have a set of like AA, and then over here I have BB. That's on door 2. And on door 3, I have numbers instead of letters. 1, 1, 2, 2, and then up there I have 3, 3, and 4, 4. That's just to make sure that I put these boards back in the same spot whenever I go to fit these back together again, just in case, it's cut a little bit crooked in some other direction. I want to make sure I put it back the same way I have it dry fit, so that way I know it all fits back up the same way that I had it, and I don't run into any issues when I go to do the final fit up. One other thing I wanted to make mention of, when I was cutting these boards to size, I made the decision to not try to cut them exactly the right size so that this would fit exactly on top. What I mean is that I purposefully cut these a little bit short, knowing that there was going to be some overlap here. And then I'll just cut this board down to size, rather than needing this to be very precise and having to get these measured exact for everything to fit up properly. I just cut these to a size that worked, and I'm going to cut this to match. Now, obviously, I can do that because I'm making a custom frame and everything for this door, but if you were not making a custom frame and you had to put this in a very specifically sized opening, you couldn't get away with being as sloppy as I am. Now comes the part that I was dreading the most and very nervous about. Because of the way that I chose to stain this thing 2 different colors and make it quote-unquote easier on myself, that means that I have to fully assemble the door, glue and all in one go. That means that I have to put silicone in the pine groove, and I have to glue all of the cedar boards together as I go along, finish the entire door all in one go before everything dries. So I was very concerned about how long it would take, and I wound up rushing through this first door, at least the bottom section of this first door, and because of that rushing, I made a mistake. The most notable mistake being that I was planning on gluing all of the cedar tongues and grooves together, all of the inner boards, the tongues and grooves glued together. I did not do that. I forgot that completely in my nervous panic. You'll see when I go to assemble the second half, I realize that I did that, and I take boards off and then start gluing them. So, it wasn't the worst mistake I could have made, but the boards aren't, glued together. They're not a cohesive unit as much as I would like. And if you're wondering why I'm using wood glue for parts and silicone for other parts, the wood glue is only going in the pine on pine sections and the cedar on cedar sections. Basically, the joints that aren't supposed to move, the joints that aren't supposed to come apart from each other. But all along the outer edge of the cedar paneling, I put silicone instead of wood glue because the cedar boards are going to be expanding and contracting quite a lot with weather and seasonal changes, so they need the room to be able to move. If you had wood glue there, it wouldn't work out. You need the more rubbery nature of the silicone in order for those boards to be able to expand and contract like they need to without something splitting apart. I know most of you are probably just here for this door and don't care about my musings, but to fill the space, I'm going to go ahead and talk about that third book that I listened to while building this door, The 12-Week Year. I've heard really good things about this book, and I was honestly really excited to read this book and implement strategies in my life, but to be honest, I didn't really care for it all that much. I don't think it's a bad book by any means, and maybe I'm just not imaginative enough, but I have a hard time envisioning how I could take the principles from that book and apply them to my own personal life situation. It seems like if you had fitness goals, or if you had the type of job where the effort that you put in affects the outcome, and the efficiency of the work that you put in affects the outcome, then there's probably a lot to be gained by shifting your mindset from thinking about a year as a 365-day period of time to shifting it to be a 12-week period of time, which is the whole point of the book, that a year is too long to plan for. You should plan for a 12-week period. Overall, I think it's a good book, and I think if I had a different type of career, or if I had different goals that are less nebulous, then I would have really benefited a lot from it. But I do have a hard time figuring out how to apply it to my own situation. So here I'm just drilling some holes into the joints where the pine tongue meets the pine groove, and I'm putting some tiny nails in there. I put a little dab of glue in the hole before I tap the nails in. I don't know if that does anything. It might. Had I been less of a discoverer, like I was talking about before, and had I been more of a planner, I probably would have made the tongues a lot longer so that I could drill holes through and put a dowel all the way through instead of a nail. Like, drill a hole, put the dowel through, and then cut it off flush. I think that would have looked really cool. But I didn't leave enough room for that, so nails it is. And to everyone who's judging me for how terrible I'm doing at hitting this nail in straight, the thing you need to understand is, in order for you guys to be able to see, I can't see. Basically, the trade-off is either you guys get a good shot of what's going on, or I get a good shot of what's going on. We can't have both, so that's why any of these shots of me hammering the nails in, you're in my way. I could only do so much. So if anyone was thinking that the white pine border looked really good with the red stained inner cedar boards, I agree. I think it looks really good. The main reason I decided to go with a dark stain for the outside was because when I was working on the last video and I was staining all of the parts on the inside of my building with burnt diesel oil, some of that burnt diesel oil wound up dripping on these boards that I was going to use for this project. And the diesel oil is fairly penetrating, so I wasn't confident I was going to be able to sand off those marks. So I decided to go with a dark oil-based stain to cover up any of those oil marks. Like I said, I'm a discovery creative type. I don't know where this thing's going. It's just one of those things that happened and I adapted. And that's how we got the color palette that we wound up going with. And I think it looks good. On the outside of this thing, focus is bad, I'm sorry. And I wanted to do the same on the inside, but I don't have a bit that will work because this bottoms out. So I guess I'm just going to leave the inside edge sharp. I'll probably knock it down with sandpaper a little bit, but it won't be nearly as uniform as the outside edge that I did with a router. Okay, so I finished sanding the first door. We started off with 60, and then we moved up to 80, and then we finished with 120. I didn't have 100, so we went to 120. Some of you might be thinking that 60 seems aggressive. I think I might do the next two doors with 40, honestly, starting off with, because starting was so slow. I was not getting anywhere sanding these doors. But I finally got them sanded. On some of these boards, there's dark spots like this. That is the diesel oil that I was using to stain all the supports in here. And that is the main reason why I'm staining the outside of this dark instead of leaving it light. I think it looks good light, but that is why I'm staining it dark, for that reason, to, you know, hide those couple of spots where I dripped diesel oil onto the pine. And then last night, while it was getting dark, I went ahead and marked out spots where all of the hinges are going. Focus, camera, focus, there you go. I went ahead and marked out spots where all the hinges are going. Ignore that one. I was doing it in the dark. I was originally just going to put the hinges wherever, you know, seemed best to me, but then I decided I'd look it up, and see if there's any kind of standard that people use for placing hinges, and it turns out that there is. So the standard is something like this. The top hinge goes about 5 inches from the bottom. The middle hinge goes in between, the bottom and the top hinge. And the bottom hinge, you would think it would also go 5 inches from the bottom, but it doesn't. The bottom hinge is usually closer to 10 inches. And I tried looking up a reason for that, and the best reason that I heard of was because hinges have these pins that you can knock out to be able to take the hinge off without having to, unscrew the whole hinge from the door. And you punch up to remove that. This camera is so not focused. So you punch up with a pin through this hinge to get that pin to come out. And if this was 5 inches from the bottom, like the hinge on the top is 5 inches from the top, you wouldn't have room to get a hammer in there to hit it. That's the only reason I can come up with for why the hinge at the bottom is 10 inches instead of 5. If you know something else, let me know. So I just wanted to share 2 quick mysteries that I had while coming out here to work on these tables again after being gone for a few days. I am sanding this second table with 40 grit starting out, by the way, and it is working fine. It's not too aggressive at all. But the mystery was I was using this sander, and when I had my hand sitting next to the sander, my arm was just getting pelted with sand, and I'm like, where's the sand coming from? Is it just flying off of the sandpaper because I bought cheap sandpaper? What's happening? So that was mystery 1. Mystery 2, underneath this thin layer of dirt that I have on the floor, I've got the 20 mil thick pond liner that's going to be my moisture barrier, and it's got this hole in it. Now, I was pretty sure my wife had done this. I was going to ask her about it, but before I said anything, she solved both of these mysteries for me. Apparently, the sander got knocked off at some point in the night, turned itself on, and was, I guess, stuck on that spot just sanding. So who knows how long the sander had been down there just spinning before my wife found it and turned it off. Who knows how much sand got sucked up into it. Who knows how much damage was done to that. And now I have this hole in my floor that I have to patch because of a stupid stray cat. So the stain I'm using here is the same type of stain that I used on the cedar inner boards. So same process. Brush it on with the brush, small section, let it sit for a minute, and then I come and wipe it off. And I know the door looks dusty, but the part that I'm actually staining, it's been cleaned. I left the inner boards dusty, having the thought that maybe it would help protect from drips. I know it's not gonna do a whole lot, but if I saw a drip land, I think the layer of dust would give me more time to wipe it away. I don't know. That's why I did it. So I'm gonna call it here for today. There's a stray cat somewhere over here meowing at me in the darkness. I have food out for it, but it won't come up and get the food while I'm here. I'm not sure how well the color is showing up in this video at nighttime with my glare on it, but I'm gonna call it here for today because it's dark and I can barely see what I'm doing. About the color. So when I first started the first one, I was like, ooh, I don't know that I like that. But I was committed at that point. I had to see it through. And it's still covered in dust, especially the middle sections. It's covered in dust. So I'm not getting a true look at what the whole thing looks like. I think it's growing on me though. I think I'm gonna like it, especially once I get the clear coat on it. I think it's gonna help tie things together and it's gonna have kind of a dark academia look. Not that it's going on anything that looks dark academia, but I think it's gonna have that vibe. Okay, cat, I will leave now so that you can have your food. If I was a real woodworker, I would have had a air compressor and a blow nozzle to blow all this dust away. I didn't have that, so I just brushed as much of it off as I could with a paintbrush, and I'm wiping the rest off with a wet rag. So now we begin the long, slow process of varnishing. It's not as bad as sanding. This is way better than sanding. Especially because as you wipe the varnish on, you're starting to get an idea of what the final product is going to wind up looking like. So it's cool. So this varnish is called spar varnish. It's not a brand, it's a type of varnish. It's the same kind of varnish that they use on like wooden boats. I'm using it obviously because if it works on boats, surely it'll work on a door. And I think I'm planning on eventually having the doors mostly covered from the elements anyway, even the parts that are outside. But even if I don't wind up doing that, I think this will last a good many years before I have to do any reapplication. For this varnish, it says that if you wait less than, I think it was if you wait less than 12 hours after the first coat of varnish you put on, you can go ahead and put on another coat of varnish without sanding anything. I didn't do that for a couple of reasons. One, because it's rare for me to have that long of a period of time all in one day to be able to do multiple coats like that all in one day. Two, because I'm doing this outside, I'm inevitably going to get little bits of dust and stuff in each layer of varnish that I put on. So rather than just varnishing over dust and detritus that's made its way onto the door, I let the varnish cure all the way, and then I sanded down just very lightly with, I think, 220 grit sandpaper. And in my experience doing that, sanding lightly between layers rather than varnishing layers on layers without any sanding in between, you get way smoother results, ultimately. This product's directions said to use 3 layers minimum. What I wound up doing was just putting 2 layers on the inner side of the door and 3 layers on the outer side of the door. I would have done more, but that's where I ran out of varnish. So I figured the 3 coats on the outside would be good enough. I was just going to call it there. But something you'll see later, I do have a couple reasons why I do need to go back at some point and revarnish all of these doors. All right, I'll try to get caught back up with what's actually happening on screen now. I'm putting clear tape over all of the holes. The astute among you probably noticed that there's holes in my door. So to solve that problem, I'm putting clear tape over one side of the holes, laying the door flat, and then filling the hole from the other side with this clear resin. I could have put some kind of pigment in it. I think after I did this, it would have looked really good if I had put some kind of like amber shade pigment in there. I didn't do that. I think it looks okay. I also didn't do a whole lot in the way of trying to remove bubbles from this resin, because I'm not looking for these little holes to be windows. I don't want them necessarily to be, completely see-through, so I thought they might actually look good with a little bit of bubbles in them. Because I was still kind of experimenting at this point, and I didn't know if the resin would, dissolve the glue in the tape, I was only putting tiny amounts of resin in even the big holes at the start, just to make sure it would set up without, tearing the tape off. But then once I realized that it worked, I would just fill the hole all the way up for the rest of them. So something that I experienced on that cedar resin table, and something that you'll probably experience anytime you're doing this kind of thing with wood, is little tiny cracks like this. The crack is actually way, there's a space in the wood running all the way along this, but really your only entrance point to be able to actually drop resin in is here, and I can only fit like 2 or 3 drops of resin in here at a time. So basically it's just a test of patience to put a couple drops here and then let it spread out, and then put a couple drops more and then let it spread out, and then you do that until you die, and then you'll be done with your door. I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but if I were to do this again, I would have probably only put 1 layer of varnish on instead of all 3 before doing this resin. So I would have done a layer of varnish, then the resin, and then I could sand out any mistakes I made in the resin before I came back and did the last 2 layers of varnish. So believe it or not, this little hole right here is probably the one that's going to give me the most trouble. This is a wormhole, and if you look at the other side, it branches out into several paths, so I'm probably going to be spending quite a lot of time filling this and waiting, and filling it and waiting. So I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera. This is the resin fully cured now. It's cured nicely. There we go. We can see some of the bubbles in it. I actually wasn't concerned about the bubbles at all. I was thinking that it might look good with bubbles, which is why I didn't do anything in particular to try to prevent the bubbles. Looking at it now, I feel like it would have looked good if I had tinted this an amber color, but I'm not that worried about it. This hole that I thought was gonna give me a problem because there's a bunch of wormholes all on the other side of this board, it apparently just connects over to one also very small hole on the other side. So all those wormholes that are visible on the other side, they're still visible. So there's several holes that I'm gonna have to flip the boards over now and fill them with resin from the other sides. This this door, this is the smallest of the doors. The other 2 are a set. This is the smaller one that I didn't care about as much. You might notice it doesn't look that good. So all of the doors, I had 2 coats of the spar varnish on, at least. A cat's walked all over this one. That's not stuck on the resin, or not stuck on the varnish though. It was fully cured when that happened. I had at least 2 coats of spar varnish on all of these doors. And then on the side that's going to be facing out, I put a 3rd coat of varnish. When I went to put the 3rd coat of varnish on this tiny door, it was raining. Well, this is a covered area. It was only raining lightly when I did it, but it wound up raining not so lightly, I guess, and I wasn't here, and I guess rain came in sideways through this and ruined this half of the door. Like, the finish is really bad. Especially, like, if you look in this crack, it's just full of, like, bubbles, and it just flakes off. It's dull, it's kind of gummy feeling. The top half of the door's fine, it's still shiny, it didn't get wet. So I need to redo this at some point. I don't know that I'm gonna do that now, though, because I'm actually out of varnish. I actually have a teeny tiny bit left, but that's getting saved to do the inside of the... whenever I drill the holes for the door handles, that's going there, and it wouldn't be enough to do this anyway. So at some point in the future, I am going to have to buy more varnish and redo this side of this door, but I'm not worried about it right now. When I put resin in on the other side, this hole filled up, but none of these other holes filled up. So I'm hoping that this hole and this hole are connected, and I can just fill resin into one of them and it'll connect through on the other side, because there aren't any more holes to fill on the other side of the piece of wood. So we'll see what happens. Bad news. This hole, maybe it connects over to this hole, but as of right now, I've sprung a leak. So this hole All the resin I'm putting in is just focus camera. You can do it. There we go. It's just dripping out of the bottom. Not even out of a hole, just out of some piece of joinery. So I think the plan is to just let that drain out and I'll figure something out. This is the next day. This is the resin that leaked out the bottom of the holes. And this is why I'm not that worried about it, or I wasn't that worried about, you know, letting it just run out. If you get it while it's soft enough, it just peels off before it's had time to harden all the way. And I might have to come and like put a minor score line there, but dang it, focus camera. There we go. I might have to put a minor score line there and just like be really careful removing that, but it's not stuck very well to the glossy surface of this, so I should be able to remove it while it's still soft without much issue. So the doors aren't technically quite done. There's 3 things that I still need to do, you know, aside from hanging them. I need to make a hole and install the door handles on just 2 of these. Only 2 of these are gonna have door handles. Sadly, I need to put another layer of varnish on these. If I had to do it over again, I would not have tried to do, yeah, here's a good example. If I did it over again, I would not have done the resin, filling the holes with the resin. I would not have done that last because I did mess up. It did mess up in a couple places, and yeah. If I were to do it over again, I would have probably put 1 or 2 layers of varnish and then done the resin, because I'm sanding down between layers, so any resin that I had messed up, I had done sloppy, it would get sanded down and re-varnished over, and it would all be smooth. So because I do have those, you know, slight imperfections in the varnish, along with the smaller door, it's on the other side, but you saw it, how it got rained on and the varnish on the bottom half of the door was completely messed up. I do need to redo that, so I'm going to buy another can of varnish and go over all of these again at some point. So I am going to varnish all of these again at some point, but you guys have seen me varnish enough. You get the idea. Sand, varnish, let dry, repeat. You know how it works. The only other thing that I need to do, and I'm waiting to do this because I would like feedback from any real woodworkers in the comments. There's... Oh, hi there, little bug. What are you? Focus. I don't know what you are. So I have all of these gaps, right? Where, you know, where it meets up. And part of this is going to be, you know, outside. So I don't want these gaps to fill with water and then rot out the inside of this board here. So what I'm wondering is, do I just go ahead and fill these with silicone and then, you know, put another bead of silicone along the bottom? Obviously, I'm going to have to do something like that. Or should I, while it's still open, should I fill this with some kind of penetrating oil or resin or something to further protect the inside of this should any water get in there? Or should I just go ahead and silicone over it? Let me know your thoughts. So yeah, that'll pretty much do it. I'll go ahead and end the video here, but I'd like to remind you all to like the video and subscribe and comment. This video and these doors were a lot of work. So if you got anything from this video, even if it was just what not to do, I'd appreciate a like. I'd like to thank you all so very much for watching. I will hopefully see you all in the next one.